Sometimes the loudest thing in your life isn't what you hear, it's what you feel. It's the whisper of self-doubt right before you speak. The mental replay of mistakes from years ago. The phantom echo of someone's judgment still shaping how you walk into a room. And the struggle you think you're facing, anxiety, burnout, rejection, is often not the root. It's the smoke rising from a deeper fire. That's why fixing it feels impossible. Because the problem isn't around you, it's within you. And the real solution doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It's silent. And it changes everything. You've read the books, listened to the podcasts, tried the routines. You swapped out habits like outfits, hoping this one finally will click. But the same weight keeps returning. Different shape, same ache. Why? Because we were never taught the truth. We were taught how to appear calm, not how to be calm. We were told to move on, forgive, stay positive. But no one taught us how to sit with pain without letting it swallow us. No one gave us tools for those midnight spirals. The ones that aren't about what's happening now, but about what we thought we buried years ago. Most people don't heal. They perform healing. They wear stillness like a costume, hoping the storm won't notice. But real stillness, real healing, begins with a silence that isn't empty. It's full of truth. There is a trick. A shift so subtle most people miss it. It doesn't come from adding more. It comes from subtracting. The trick is to stop engaging with the noise in your mind, as if it's a debate you must win. You don't need to argue with fear. You don't need to outsmart anxiety. You don't need to convince your own brain of your worth. Because the mind isn't always logical, it's habitual. And not all the voices in your head are yours. Some are echoes of a parent's disappointment, a partner's criticism, a teacher's glare, society's expectations. You absorbed them so deeply, you mistook them for your inner voice. But just because it sounds familiar doesn't mean it's true. The trick is to stop fighting the noise and start noticing it. Like the background chatter in a cafe. It's there. But you don't need to respond. This is not absence. It's power. Most people think silence means you've given up. But the right kind of silence, the conscious kind, is the moment you start taking your power back. When you stop reacting, you start observing. And when you observe, you see the root, not the surface. You realize you weren't angry, you were afraid of being abandoned. You weren't lazy, you were paralyzed by shame. You weren't overthinking, you were under-trusting your own intuition. Silence reveals what noise hides. Picture this. You're in a room. Someone criticizes you. Your chest tightens, your mind races. The old urge to defend, explain, fix. But this time you pause. You don't absorb. You don't argue. You just let their words float, without turning them into truth. You breathe into the tension, not to push it away, but to greet it. Because silence isn't shutting down emotion. It's creating enough space for your real self to respond. Not the wound, not the ego, not the scared child trying to be enough, but the you that's been buried beneath the noise for years. That's the silent trick. It's not passive. It's presence. Here's the irony. The peace you've been chasing doesn't live in the next version of you. It lives in your ability to stop feeding what drains you. It lives in the pause before the reaction, in the breath between the trigger and your truth. You want to fix your overthinking? Stop treating every thought like an emergency. You want to fix your relationships? Stop responding from the version of you that's still trying to earn love from someone who couldn't give it. You want to fix your exhaustion? Stop chasing outcomes that were never yours to carry. The moment you stop reacting like you used to, something incredible happens. What used to control you begins to dissolve. But as peace arrives, a new question emerges. If I stop reacting, what happens to the part of me that needed chaos to feel alive? When you stop reacting, the silence feels peaceful at first. Then it echoes. And that echo reveals something louder than the noise you silenced. The addiction to struggle itself. Because struggle gave you a story. It gave you identity. It gave you purpose to fight, to prove, to fix. Without it, who are you? We don't just repeat chaos because we're broken. We repeat it because it's familiar. And familiarity feels like safety, even when it hurts. You might not want to struggle, but you know who you are inside it. The one who carries others, who keeps trying, who gets up after every fall. But if you stop struggling, if you stop over-explaining, over-giving, over-analyzing, then what? Then you're left with silence. And that silence feels like losing yourself. But it's not loss. It's rebirth. Because silence isn't a void. It's a mirror. You've mistaken effort for value. You thought love must be earned. Worth must be proven. Peace must be deserved. But silence doesn't demand anything from you. It just asks that you be. Silence doesn't steal your identity. It returns it. You're not your thoughts. You're not your trauma response. You're not the fixer, the pleaser, the thinker, the chaser. You are something softer, freer, wiser. And that version of you, the real you, can only appear when the noise stops performing. This part hurts. Because when you start detaching from chaos, I'll feel guilt. Guilt for resting. Guilt for saying no. Guilt for not responding. Guilt for not being who they always expected you to be. It'll feel like you're doing something wrong. But guilt isn't always a sign of wrongdoing. Sometimes it's a sign that you're breaking a pattern that was built to keep you small. You feel guilty for putting yourself first because you were taught that your needs are selfish. You feel guilty for detaching because you learned that love means sacrificing your peace. But real love doesn't require you to shrink. Real peace doesn't come with guilt. Healing begins when you stop explaining yourself. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your healing. You don't need to defend your silence. You don't need to justify your distance. Healing isn't a group project. It's a sacred return to yourself. Those who truly love you won't need your performance. They'll feel your peace. Those who only loved your performance, they'll disappear with the noise. Let them. You don't need an audience to be whole. You just need space to hear your own voice again. When you start choosing silence over reaction, everything changes. Not because the world shifted, but because you did. You stopped panicking over other people's moods. You stopped chasing closure. You stopped spiraling when plans fall apart. Because peace doesn't come from control. It comes from clarity. And clarity only lives in silence. You start to see things as they are, not as your wounds interpret them. You notice when kindness has strings. You sense when a conversation is pulling you back into old patterns. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You stop confusing performance for connection. You see clearly because the static is gone. There won't be fireworks. No grand finale. Just a small, quiet moment. Something stressful happens. And for the first time, you don't react the old way. You don't spiral. You don't chase. You just breathe. You pause. And you respond from peace. That's the silent victory. The proof that the trick worked. You didn't fight your way out. You stopped feeding what was never yours to carry. But even then, there's one final test. The temptation to return to the noise, because it still feels like home. Silence can feel unfamiliar. It can feel like loneliness, but it's not. It's space, the kind of space where freedom lives. You're not broken. You're detoxing. Detoxing from attention you had to earn. From conversations you had to control. From relationships where love meant sacrifice. From identities that only existed in reaction to pain. The hardest part of healing isn't letting go of others. It's letting go of the version of yourself that survived them. You'll miss that version because she kept you safe. But you don't need her anymore. You don't need to hold the world together while falling apart inside. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to exist without explanation. And yes, people will notice your shift. Some will be confused. Some will be offended. Some will try to pull you back. Not because they hate you, but because they only knew how to love the version of you that tolerated the chaos. Let them adjust, or let them go. Either way, keep choosing peace over performance. Whenever the noise creeps back in through a memory, a message, a moment, ask yourself, does this need a reaction or just a release? You'll be amazed how many things survive, only because you keep answering them with your energy. You don't need closure. You don't need to win the argument. You don't need to fix their misunderstanding. You just need peace. Peace doesn't come when life is perfect. It comes when you stop letting imperfection steal your focus. Stillness isn't weakness. It's rebellion in a world that glorifies reaction. When everyone else is posting, explaining, defending, you pause. You breathe. You listen. That pause, that breath is where wisdom lives. That's where your boundaries grow. That's where your intuition returns home. And suddenly, the urge to fix, chase, and prove fades. Not because the world got easier, but because you stopped carrying what was never yours. You were taught to measure your worth by how much you do, how fast you recover, how much you can endure without breaking. But healing isn't perfection. It's presence. It's sitting with your feelings without numbing them. It's saying no without apology. It's being seen without performing. It's choosing rest without guilt. You don't need a guru or a system to teach that. You just need to notice when you're leaving yourself to earn someone else's love and come back. That's it. That's the silent trick. You didn't fix your life. You freed it. Look at you now. No longer addicted to chaos. No longer chasing ghosts. No longer explaining your worth. You didn't just get better. You got honest. And that honesty brought you home. To the rarest superpower in the world. Peace. Not because everything changed, but because you did. You stopped feeding the cycle. You stopped watering the weeds. You stopped mistaking pain for purpose. And now you rest. Not because it's over, but because you finally remember you were never here to suffer and call it strength. You were here to live. Fully, softly, bravely. So the next time the world feels like it's falling apart, don't rush to fix it. Don't chase the noise. Just pause. Breathe. And let silence do what it always does. Reveal what truly matters. That's the trick. That's the way out. And that's where you begin again.